When a workspace bans earphones and only allows office-wide music, malicious compliance might be due. We'll get into that story shortly, but first, everything is to plan, technically. Reading a story on this board reminded me of something that happened back in my retail days. Working in a retailer of a 300-plus chain, head office had this idea of putting up plans for various sizes of stores, detailing the exact location of every item in each section of the store, so that, basically, every store would be as identical as possible, and these plans would be checked and possibly updated every week. We had a tech department, which was basically tablets, Bluetooth speakers, headphones, earphones, sometimes cheap laptops, and the occasional random techie items that head office had decided to source from somewhere. The problem was that the stuff we actually got for the tech department almost never matched what was on the head office plans, and was often not even close. We had no clue why this was, and the store manager pointed this out to his boss and various people at head office, but nothing changed. As such, our standard procedure was to look at the plans for the tech department, then pretty much forget they existed and fill the department by deciding what would go where ourselves. Head office got wind of some stores not sticking to the plans, usually because of selling out of something and either spreading stuff out or putting something else in there. Down came the commandment from on high, via email. All stores are to merchandise according to plan and cannot deviate under any circumstances. If something sells out, leave that plot empty until the next restock of that product. The store manager sent a query to help the chain, double-checking this, asking if any circumstances really meant any circumstances, including ones that would have a large negative effect on sales, like the issues he'd already highlighted. He got told any circumstances meant just that. So we did exactly as we were told. We stripped the tech department of everything that wasn't on the plans, and put everything that was where it was supposed to go. This meant about 2/3 of the department was empty. We also piled up everything that we had that was not on the plans in our stockroom. Then we waited. By the following week, there were a good few emails from people up the chain, asking why our tech sales had plummeted. The manager's response was to simply email back 2 pictures and explain what they were. Picture number 1 was the tech department, merchandised according to plan. Picture number 2 was the pile of stuff sitting in our stockroom, not out to sell because it wasn't on the plan. The week after, we were told to revert to doing things as we had been. Yes, the hazards of making hard, fast rules with no exceptions. Guys, there always have to be exceptions, otherwise you end up with something like this. Aggressive Ad5454 commented, "My wife worked in the home office of a big US retail chain. Everybody in the home office, executives included, were required to pull 4 shifts every December working in a store doing whatever the manager needed done. That policy cut down on stupid home office tricks pretty effectively. Everybody knew about Christmas selling season scrambling and what it takes to keep a store running." Also, hey everybody, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these malicious compliance videos, it would be amazing if you liked this video and commented down below if you're listening to our podcast. Now then, our next story is, want us to keep working? I'll make the entire workday null and void. Worked as a supervisor for a food bank many years ago. We would travel to set up local blood drives in various towns and locations. Went to a community center about an hour away and found out their HVAC system was broken. It was supposed to be a hot day, somewhere in the mid-90s. FDA regulates the blood donations collection industry, and they have strict rules in place. One of them is that the temperature in the collection area at a blood drive cannot exceed a certain amount. This is to prevent bacteria growth in the blood collection process, and to prevent donors from having a bad reaction during or after donation, fainting, vomiting, etc. I called our manager, Jess, and said, "Hey, there's no AC in this building and it's already getting close to the cutoff temp. I think we should cancel and reschedule." "Absolutely not." Jess thinks we're just trying to get a day off work, like we didn't already load all the equipment up and drive out here to waste our time, but whatever. She gets in her car and drives out to the site. She then takes the QC thermometer, which was already out of range by the time she got there, and places it on a window where a fan was blowing. After a minute or so, the temp drops just below the threshold. It's fine. Set up the rest of the site and continue with the blood drive. Well, the temp needs to be taken in the collection area, not on the other side of the building by a window. The temp is fine. You all need to stay here and do your job. She gets in her car and leaves. Okay, let's do the blood drive then. She's the boss. After each unit of blood collected, I quarantine the units and fill out the proper paperwork per SOP guidelines. We get back to the blood bank that evening, and I hand off the coolers of quarantined blood to the lab. They ask me if I really quarantined an entire blood drive, and I say, yep. So they document and incinerate each unit of blood. A 10-hour workday with travel expenses, medical equipment, staff, etc., all thrown out the window, not to mention wasting the time of all the people that donated. The next day, the site director calls me into her office, I assume to chew my butt. She was actually confused and wondered if something happened at the blood drive that caused every unit to be quarantined. I told her the reason, and about Jess. Not sure how the conversation went afterwards, but unfortunately, she was able to keep her job for a few weeks before being fired. Don't make a set of rules if you don't expect people to follow them. Well, yeah, and in this case, placing the thermometer by a window next to an AC unit, and it just barely got below the threshold of allowable, permissible temperature, you're taking shortcuts. You're accusing other people of trying to skive off work, and, you're the one that's like setting a horrible example here. You know what you're doing. So, yeah, malicious compliance, definitely warranted, and she deserved to lose her job. That's terrible. Mysterious Elk 6248 commented, I'd have just informed the donors of the temp issue and let them make their choice whether they wanted to donate. Then do what you did, because if nobody wants to donate in that condition, then your point still stands. Our next story is, I brought the company to a standstill to make a point. I worked in the engineering department of a smaller manufacturing company, around 70 to 80 employees. My responsibility, among other things, was to handle any design changes, edit part and assembly drawings, bills of materials, etc. Previously, this was all handled by putting together a packet of actual paper documents that had to be shuffled from engineering to manufacturing, sometimes ping-ponging back and forth if we were doing something complicated that required input from various people within those departments. Eventually, the company started to implement a software-driven procedure that was supposed to eliminate the stacks of paper that would sometimes get lost on someone's desk. The problem was that our bare-bones staff didn't really have time to learn all the ins and outs of the software and refine the process to be truly efficient. Basically, it was left so that if an item was entered into an engineering change order, it was locked down so that no one could build one. But also a customer couldn't even order one, or any machine that this item happened to be a component of until the change process was completed. Sometimes this could take weeks. I tried explaining several times that if we ever had to work on some item that's used in several of our products, this would bring everything to a screeching halt. My manager at the time understood this, but could never get all the people who needed to work on the software procedure to sit down and finalize everything. One day, I was tasked with changing the design of a hardware component that was used in every machine we built. I told my manager that as soon as I started the process, no one in sales would be able to enter an order for any customers until the process would be completed. He shrugged and said, "Do it," knowing that I was right. Within 30 minutes of getting started, a salesman came to my desk asking why he couldn't enter an order. I explained what was happening. He left, and soon after, the VP of the company was at my desk asking what needed to be done. So I told him he needed to corral everyone to hash out how the software was supposed to work properly instead of the half-assed just lock everything down deal they left off with. He immediately called in whoever was on that list. It took a few days, as I recall, and the component in question was expedited to be approved within the week. To this day, I use this story in interviews whenever I'm asked one of those questions, like, give me an instance where you had to solve a major problem in the workplace. Well, if there's one thing we're learning so far in today's video, it is that there are no shortcuts in the workplace. You gotta do what you gotta do. Varnigma replied, I was doing contract, database work for a small door company many years ago. I got to know the head of IT pretty good, and one night over drinks, he asked me if I'd like to do a side project for them. They had the same old process you described. Orders, papers would go into folders and move from desk to desk as part of the process flow. The problem was that anytime someone needed to find a folder, they didn't know who had it. I spent a day monitoring them, and their approach was to yell across the room, "Who has the folder to client X?" So I built the Who Has It application. It was super simple. The person at the beginning of the process would create a new entry for new orders, and anytime the folder went to a different person's desk, that person would open the app and check the folder in. So at any given time, you could look up a folder and see on whose desk it resided. Of course, it was only as good as the people remembering to do the check-ins, but it improved their process big time. I got a bonus when I was done. I think I built the entire thing using MS Access. That's how long ago this was. Our next story is, I need an answer right now. This might not be the biggest story in this sub, but I still reminisce fondly of it. So a couple of years ago, I took over a restaurant in the center of the capital city of our country with a couple of friends. We're 3 associates and 1 chef cook. This restaurant was mainly a tourist trap for the pasta Kenya and was also known to cater to big groups from either companies, business dinners, and tourist agencies where they would just serve some decent slop in a historical setting for a fixed menu price. Our concept was to bring this establishment back to the locals, the neighborhood, and lovers of traditional food and drinks. So we tried a soft opening and limit ourselves to 30 customers per evening, but the previous owner hadn't even communicated towards his customers that the restaurant would be taken over, nor had he closed the online reservation system, to which we didn't have any access. So we got constantly flooded with requests for big groups, between 20 to even 50 persons, and here our story begins. As we just started, we tried to please most people and cater to what was possible. One day, I got a phone call off some white collar, already quite condescending on the telephone, as I probably am just a lowly server on the phone, with a request to come with 20 persons in 2 days' time. I told him politely over the phone that I couldn't make the decision to take his reservation on my own, and that he could send us an email with the request, and we'd talk it over with the chef cook and my associates to see if we could cater them. He didn't like this one bit, and told me he couldn't wait that long for an answer. I immediately assumed he probably forgot to make a reservation for such a big group on time, and that he failed his responsibility, but now tries to push it off on me. Like I always say, sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. But instead, I ensured him he would get an answer on his email on the day itself. No, this is not acceptable. I need an answer right now. My patience was running out with this unrespectful fatneck, so I politely answered, "So, to my understanding, you need an answer immediately?" "Yes," with a clear sound of superiority and thinking he had won. "Okay, sir, if you need an answer immediately, it will be very simple. That answer will be no." The sound of crickets for a couple of seconds. "So, to what email address can I send the request?" We got his request by email and he got an answer within 2 minutes. "We're sorry, but we can't accept your request to cater your group. Kind regards, name of the restaurant." You know, as is the case with just about anything in life, when does treating someone like they're beneath you or treating them like crap in general ever result in you getting what you want from that person? Don't work like that. Death Boyak commented, "Oh, I was so glad that played out how I hoped." Exactly the same here. I endeavor to be responsible and am moderately risk-averse, so if you hassle me for that answer, it will be a polite and immediate no, then. Being browbeaten into permitting something has blown up in my face too many times for an angry person to get their way. And OP replied to this, "Exactly! In my language we say, you offer them a hand and they will take your entire arm." Had it happen too many times, and it still happens on a smaller scale though. Our next story is basketball malicious compliance. So when I was around 20 years old, I started playing basketball in a gym with some friends. I wasn't very good at it, shot was extremely unreliable, and I've got absolutely no left-hand dribble, just like Jaylen Brown. But it was a nice way to do some cardio and have a laugh. Since I'm on the shorter side, I played point guard and tried to focus mostly on being a pest on defense and do the right pass. Don't picture YMCA extremely competitive games also. Most of the guys out there were about having fun, do some work, and improve a little bit. One day, new guy comes to the gym and asks to play. Short, stocky, bald, in his 30s, extremely serious, but with some aura of superiority to himself. Probably bank manager or something like that. He has a botched knee and wears a knee pad, important detail for later. Let's call him Baldy. He also plays point guard, so we match up a lot. Baldy plays better than the rest of us because he's intense. He thinks that he must win each game, shouts, complains, calls fouls that have nothing to do with the game, rarely passes the ball, and generally makes the game less fun for everyone else. One particular day, he's being extra annoying, and on a fast break, I try to swipe the ball out of his hands when he starts the layup movement, but end up fouling him pretty clearly. He calls foul, I acknowledge, 2 free throws, okay. 2 plays later, same thing. I try to swipe when he gathers, mostly ball, he calls foul. I argue, he gets angry and starts to shout. I say, never mind, shoot your dang free throws, and we get on with the game. A couple of plays later, again, fast break, I try to swipe on gather. Yeah, I never learn. Clear foul. He gets up really angrily and walks to my face and says, if you're gonna foul me every single time, let me know, so next time you're standing below the basket, I'll jump knee first into your head and we'll settle this for sure. And I go, okay, I'll be waiting. Baldy is fuming. He gets the ball on a fast break, a lot of turnovers on my team, yeah, and starts running. I was a little behind on the play, so I have a solid 2 to 3 seconds on my painted area before he arrives. I know that he's not going to even try the layup. He's coming straight at me. So I get pretty much under my basket and I wait. And he delivers. He jumps knee with knee pad high into my face, ball in hand, not even trying to score. At the last moment, I slide to the side, so Baldy passes flying right by me and crashes into the basket support knee first. Baldy tries to get up, but he has hurt the knee and is limping badly. Out of the game for sure. So I walk to him and say, hey, you told me that we need to settle this for sure. I did just that. We're playing for fun here. Go take a shower. I guess that he took it better than expected. Everybody was ready for a brawl, but he just left. He never came back to play again. Nobody liked the guy anyway. Yeah, there's always that one guy that treats a pickup game like it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals and just sours the fun for everybody. So Baldy, the next time there's an expansion draft for like a professional level basketball team, why don't you try out for that instead of playing against like young 20s guys in the YMCA? Come on. Algie888 commented, I have a similar type of story. In mine, it was a drop-in ball hockey. We played in the community center gym, kind of small with brick walls. One difference, we were all competitive. I mean, this took place in Canada, and it was hockey. Not dropping the gloves kind of competitive, but it was intense. One thing we avoided was checking into the aforementioned brick walls. We all had to work the next day. The only one who didn't seem to get that memo was a guy who was 6'4", a pretty decent player, but would come up behind you and try to smear you out. At the time, I was about 170 pounds and 5'8", so I could be pretty easily smeared. I had also just started taking some karate classes with my wife though, so I had an aha moment when I learned about leverage and movement and couldn't wait to put it into practice. In the very next game that we were put onto opposite teams, I waited until the proper setup could happen. Eventually, the ball comes to the corner and I go to dig it out. I keep my eye on the ball so that I seem oblivious while I listen for the telltale stomping of feet. I set my own feet in a solid stance, and just before he makes contact, I shift my upper body down and over, as you would in a throw, and Buddy just sailed over me into that sweet brick wall. I very politely helped him up and apologized, Canadian, remember, and said, sorry, I didn't see you coming, are you okay? In my case, he did come back, but he was much more careful of his checks. Apparently, he realized that bricks are hard. And Film Yak added, my Wile E. Coyote moment was when I was about 8 years old, playing outside with 2 friends. A bit of roughhousing, but we were having fun. I don't recall what led up to it, but they decided to charge at me from 2 opposite sides, running full speed at me to crush me in the middle, and I immediately thought of Bugs Bunny. Okay, switching cartoons, I get it, but... and waited until right before they hit me, and I calmly took 1 step back. Yeah, they bashed their heads into each other. Oof. Now, as an adult, I really feel for them, but we were kids who didn't know any better, so they moaned and groaned and eventually shook it off, and we went right back to playing. But I was proud enough of that moment to remember it now, decades later. Our next story is Doctor versus Master. A family member told me this story. He was in college back in the 70s and had a professor who was rude, condescending, and overall unpleasant to deal with. My family member typically called the professor using the title Professor So-and-so. One day, this professor pulled my family member aside and said, you need to call me Dr. So-and-so. I have my PhD and have earned my title. My family member said, no problem, I can do that, as long as you call me Master Family Member. I have a master's degree and I've earned my title too. Never heard another word about it from Professor so-and-so. You know, I myself have a PhD, and I don't think I've ever demanded that someone call me doctor before, but that does have a nice ring to it. Dr. Brendan. Yeah, from now on, that's how I'm going to introduce myself. Not psych, just kidding. Our next story is Lumi, we need more power. About 20 years ago, I was part of a team designing remote data collection sites on a government contract. The locations would be supplied with commercial utility power and have backup diesel generators as well. During one of the meetings, I pointed out that if utility power dropped, there could be at least a minute before the generators would have power restored, and another minute or two before the equipment was fully booted up and running again. Because I pointed out the situation, Bob, not his real name, a really charismatic go-getter from Manglement, voluntold me to look into the matter myself and make recommendations. So I did my research, determined that Brand A uninterruptible power supplies, UPSs, would be best suited for the job, and then turned in my report. At the next meeting, Bob informed everyone they, that is, he, had decided to go with Brand B power supplies instead, because they were about 10% cheaper per unit than Brand A, and total cost would be almost 25% less per unit for buying in bulk. Now, for a little tech talk, Brand A is what's called a double conversion unit, meaning that the internal batteries were in a constant charge-discharge state, much like the battery in your car, so that if utility power was interrupted, the output would never drop, and the equipment would not reboot itself. Brand B is what's called a standby unit, meaning that if utility power dropped, a relay would swing the UPS output to the inverter running off the batteries. There would be a mandatory drop in power to the equipment, much like an emergency light in a restaurant. I tried to tell everyone through emails and CC'd to the entire team, plus BCCs to myself and my lawyer, that Brand B would cause problems for us further down the road. Bob's reply all overrode my concerns with, quote, "It's only a few milliseconds, nothing to worry about. We're going with Brand B and that's final. Cue the malcomp." Okay, Bob, we'll do it your way. For the first year or so, everything seemed fine. A few glitches here and there, but nothing drastic. Then construction began on a nearby housing development. Suddenly, we started getting comms lost and system rebooted messages several times a day from each remote site further away. Power was being interrupted to the remote sites, and the Brand B UPSs couldn't handle it. They were dropping their outputs for as long as 12 to 15 milliseconds, which shut off the equipment. When power came back on, the equipment would reboot. By this time, most of the others on this project had gone elsewhere. The customer complained to corporate. They stepped in, and of course, I was first in line to be thrown under the bus by Bob. They asked me why we were using Brand B when Brand A was the obvious choice. Ask Bob. Bob denied everything until I produced printouts of the original emailed recommendation and his responses to it. Cue the fallout. Bob was let go, and corporate had to shell out mucho dólares to retrofit the remote sites, with Brand A, of course, and pay fines according to the government contract. I got to put in a lot of overtime to lead the retrofit effort. And yet another golden example of why paper trails are so important. If he wants to deny, you pull up those emails and yeah, see you bye, Bob. Captain Cinders commented, "That reminds me, our work had a separate financial department who got bonuses for finding cheaper alternatives for any purchase order. The financial guy assigned to us was great. He genuinely found cheaper alternatives and negotiated cheaper prices for the same item. Others were not so lucky. One purchase order for computers was swapped to another supplier, which was great until the computers turned up for the design team to do 3D design and rendering without any high-res screens, peripherals, or even video cards. New Bosterone replied, "Yeah, we had one of those. We spent months arguing with them about purchasing a couple of mini supercomputers, circa 1992. Every little thing. We found a VAR that can supply that cheaper. Near the end of the fiscal year, when we would have lost the money, they screwed up badly enough that they weren't allowed to question us any further. They presented us with the final quote. We pointed out the reason VAR2's price was so good was because it did not include licenses for the OS, compliers, or NFS. Oops. Our next story is, no earphones, only office-wide music? Got it. This happened roughly 6 years ago when I was still working as a technical writer, but I remembered this story when I was reading a post in here about a manager fresh off his leadership training or something, which reminded me of the time when a new operations manager, OM, was hired to supervise and manage operations. That is, to oversee writers writing articles, legal or business documents, editors, etc. Needless to say, after he was hired, it was a bunch of endless work huddles where everyone is mandated to join, even when you're trying to catch a deadline, and new and absurd rules, one of which was no wearing headphones while working. Instead, each group or team can choose the music for the day. Why? Apparently, wearing headphones gives off the impression that we're not concentrating on our work. What that means, I don't know. What I do know is that as writers, we need to be in a certain mood or environment to be able to write. And admittedly, not everyone has the same taste in music, which I feel for me is quite obvious. Now we're all ticked. Not only are we not allowed to listen to music we like, but we're also forced to listen to music we don't like. Here's where the malicious compliance begins. During our team's turn, we decided to choose a genre of music that's best known here as Gigi. Do we like it? Yes. Do some people in the office hate it? Also yes. But not enough people hated it to the point of raising a complaint, so we left it at that. However, in the afternoon, I decided that it was time for my weekly crash out and decided to blast some Taylor Swift songs. A majority of my team loves her, but do you know who doesn't? Our very rock music loving, patient, and understanding team lead. She later told us the reason. She had a niece or nephew that forced her to listen to a specific Taylor Swift song over and over again, and it made her swear off of Taylor Swift songs. After the second or third song, our team lead couldn't take it anymore, so she transferred to our meeting room where she worked until the end of the day. The next day, the person who chose the songs and playlist was also a Swiftie, so Taylor Swift music was blasting in our office again. This affected the team's productivity, the writers because we would just hold concerts singing along, and our team lead who was somehow the victim of OM's cruel rule. But we followed the rule. No one was using their headphones. No music playing from the laptops. They check this sometimes too. After only a week, the OM revoked the no headphones, only office-wide music policy. Apparently, we're now allowed to listen to anything we want, as long as deadlines are met and quotas are exceeded. Honestly, it was fun for me because I listened to anything and everything. I can only imagine how this policy was a literal torture device to others. Shortly after, I resigned because of that OM for other reasons, but the fun we had with my office mates was absolutely memorable. Yeah, this rule sucks, but you just gotta shake it off, cause haters gonna hate. Come on, that was pretty good, right? Say Zay replied, "We have a radio in the office. It's usually something offensive, but now and again, someone changes it, and it's so hard to focus if it's talk radio rather than music. I had an old iPod Nano with one of those radio transmitters that allowed you to tune in your car. Loaded up a playlist, placed it underneath the radio, and my signal was stronger than the actual radio station. The first time anyone noticed there was anything fishy going on was when there had been no adverts for a couple of hours. Eventually, they changed the channel, but I used that trick several times before anyone caught on." Our next story is, problem solved, but want advice. This might not be the best place for this post, but me and my team did a month of malicious compliancing, so it felt right. So I'm a member of management, not very high up, and I'm paid hourly. When I got hired, I was told I was scheduled for 45 hours, but another 5 to 10 wouldn't be uncommon when we were busy. During the year, I averaged 10 hours a week OT, and my staff averages 5 to 7, depending on the person and position. Me and my team work second shift in a production, shipping, and receiving environment. The day crew is held to a strict 40-hour work week, and the second shift is expected to work till everything is done. Exceptions are made on a case-by-case basis. My crew absolutely does not abuse this system, as most of them don't want to be there at 3 a.m., so we're pretty good at getting things done in a timely manner. I'd give us a B+ or A-. About 2 months ago, we were told because of the uncertainty of the current state of the world, the company was not allowing any overtime. Period. So for 3 weeks, we were stopping mid-production, cleaning up and going home. There would be trucks half unloaded, product half assembled, deliveries not finished for the next day. Every aspect of the job wasn't finished. Pretty much the place was exactly what me and my crew walk into every day. We even had an angry truck driver who was used to being able to drop his trailer at 1 a.m., show up to the lights off and no one home, so he had to wait for the morning. The first day, the day crew freaked out that there was work to be completed from the day before. After 3 weeks, we were inundated with backed up work and angry customers. Week 4, our district manager came in to see me personally and ask about the situation and why we were so behind. I explained that all of our OT had been cut, and if they wanted everything complete at the end of the day, it would take another 5 to 10 people, depending on the knowledge, speed, and skill of the people we hired. I also told him that the majority of my staff was now looking to leave, including myself, and 2 of my best people had already found other jobs. All of us rely on the scheduled OT and factor it as part of our pay, and we've created more issues than just being behind. Needless to say, we're back to my team working overtime, but now that I'm short 2 of my best people, we're pulling 70 to 75-hour weeks to catch up. I really enjoyed my job, but I'm now thinking of continuing my job search. I'm pretty frustrated with this place, and while a few weeks have proven the necessity of what me and my team do, I now wonder what's going to happen in another month when we catch up, and then in another few months when it slows back down. I've been here 5 years, and this was the first time I felt like this, but the potential to lose what amounts to nearly a fifth of my pay because they decide later to try this experiment again makes me feel sick. They also haven't repealed their no OT policy. We just have a dispensation to work as much as needed to catch up. Part of me says jump ship now, and part of me accepts that I'll work a month with no OT, and then work a crazy month to catch up for the rest of my time here. I don't know. Well, I would just say if your gut's telling you to jump ship, you should go ahead and do it. It's never too late to make a career change or alter your life's trajectory, man. Just go for it. Knows Little commented, folks with the know-how already saw the ship sinking. Will your continued loyalty be rewarded under the current leadership? That, you have to ask, shows where your instinct is leaning. It would be wise to gather references and contacts with folks here. Start looking, update that resume. Consider if there's others you might like to bring with you. Our next story is, GM didn't like the new owners making change. A few years ago, I decided to get a second part-time job for some extra cash at a well-known burger place. When I started, I heard that the GM, we'll call her Tammy, was pretty new at her job and no one seemed to like her much. I soon found out why. She was demanding, didn't know how to talk to people at all, she liked to scream instead, and acted like she was the queen bee that everyone had to wait on. When breakfast was over and I went to throw away all the extra sausages, one of my coworkers rushed over and said, "No, you have to save one for Tammy. She'll be here soon." So, about 11 a.m., Tammy comes waltzing in and goes straight to her office. All my coworkers start rushing around to make her a large iced tea and a sausage breakfast sandwich. Someone takes it into her. She comes barreling out of her office, screaming that the sausage wasn't fresh for her liking, so make her another. I was just like, wow. Then she comes out and walks around and just yells at people about everything. I was already thinking at this point that I don't think I'll be here long, but thank goodness I only worked morning shifts, so only had to deal with her for a couple of hours. Tammy was the worst boss I've ever encountered in all of my working life. Our site was recently sold to another company and they sent in Kevin to make some changes. He was a nice enough guy, but every change he made, as soon as he left, Tammy would yell at us for doing things differently, Kevin's way, and not the way she likes them done. We would say, "But Kevin said we're to do it this way from now on." And Tammy would yell, "I don't care what Kevin wants. This is my store. I'm the GM and I want things my way." She told us not to worry about Kevin. She would handle him. And I'm thinking, okay, Tammy, but aren't these people your boss? You don't own the store. They do. But okay, big boss Tammy, whatever you say. So the next day, Kevin comes in early before Miss Tammy. I continue to do things the way Tammy wants them done because that's what she told us to do. When Kevin approached me and said, "Why are you doing things the old way? I thought I showed you the changes that I've made." And I answered, "Yes, Kevin, I know, and I tried to do things the way you showed us, but Tammy said she's the GM and this is her store and she told us not to worry about what you say and to only worry about what she tells us to do." Kevin said nothing but made a strange face. When Tammy came in, they went into her office. I wish I were a fly on the wall. She left not long after, and she came out screaming at everyone about the times and drive-thru. I swear she just liked yelling. It didn't even matter what it was about. I left that day and just never went back. I'm too old to deal with some manager that's way too big for her britches. About a month later, I go to another fast food place nearby, and lo and behold, Tammy is at the window. She looks visibly embarrassed when she sees me. She hesitates as she starts to hand me my food, and I hear a woman in the back say to her in an impatient voice, "Tammy, what are you doing? We have times to worry about." She whispers, "I know," and hands me my bag, and I smile and drive away. The next day, I went to my old place for lunch and asked them what happened to Tammy. They gleefully told me that just a couple of days after I quit, that Kevin fired her because she kept refusing to do things his way. He also told her he didn't like how she talked to people. They all seemed so happy, and I would make sure to visit Tammy's new place every now and then because it's fun to see her have her big ego crushed. You know, first-time manager on a power trip, it's something that we see all too often in corporate America, at least. I mean, I'm sure it's like this around the world, but definitely people like this in the United States. So for her to almost immediately get served up some humble pie is very, very satisfying to read about. 5:30 Old School Geek commented, "I'm petty enough that if they served breakfast when Tammy was there, I would intentionally order something with sausage in it, then scream at her, 'This sausage isn't fresh enough. Bring me another, now.'" Our Guidance 8570 commented, "Decades ago when my brother and I worked these kinds of jobs in high school, one of the places he worked at was McDonald's. He told me how to make small tweaks to an order that would force them to make it hot and fresh. Who knows if those tweaks even work now? Kinda like rumored secret menus at other places, I suppose." Our next story is, "Work my wage." Obligatory not in the US, also not my malicious compliance, but my manager's, but I was along for the entire ride. I work in a 200-person sized company, have been here for 9 years. Department colleagues are great, other than one person, but that's for a different story. My manager is among the best people I've had the good fortune to ever meet, and both department heads I've worked with are fantastic too. This particular incident happened during COVID. I was assigned to a project for a specific role, which was typically for managers. However, this government project also required someone to submit sensitive documents for approval, and you needed to have government certifications. To get these certifications, you had to attend courses and training that were usually for managerial levels. They were also not cheap, a couple of thousands. I got these from a previous job that unfortunately went bankrupt. I wasn't a manager in my current job, but due to having these certifications, I was assigned the role. My manager has been trying to get me promoted for a while now, but HR constantly provided excuses. No available position, not the right time, he needs to prove himself, etc. Manager figures this is the perfect time and goes to HR again with my blessing. HR again rejects the proposition, and my manager instead argues for a pay raise then. HR says that I've already hit the cap for my position. Tough luck. He's now ticked and thinking of the next plan. HR then sends him an email reiterating everything, but adds, quote, he should be working his wage anyway. He just smiles and starts his malicious compliance by telling me he's taking me off the project, as well as informing the project lead. Project lead informs HR that they need to fill the slot, either by sending someone to train for the role or to hire someone. HR is appalled by the price and instead chooses to hire someone instead. This is where crap starts rising. Remember I mentioned that this was a government project? That means if we fail to meet deadlines, we get fined. With no one submitting required documents for approval, the project grinded to a halt. First month, HR did nothing, not even putting out hiring ads. At the end of the month, we were fined $5,000. HR finally realizes that this was serious and finally started putting ads out. However, they offered basically intern tier of pay, lowballing the hardest I've ever seen. There was no shot anyone with said certifications ever taking up the offer. Month 2 ends. We get slapped by a $25,000 fine as listed in the contract. HR panics now, raising their offer, but again, still way too low. Month 3 ends. We now get an additional $50,000 fine. C-suite are now all involved, especially the CEO. CEO questions project lead why no work was done for 3 months. Lead sends him to HR. HR tried to throw me under the bus, but my manager and head produced HR's email. CEO pulls me into a meeting with my manager and head, asks me to return to my role. In addition, he guarantees me a promotion, including back pay since the start of the project. He even sends an email with his official business use signature stating the offer. I agree. In the end, one HR member got fired and another demoted. CEO also started a separate progression path in the company for those who aren't interested in managerial roles. In fact, I got 2 promotions for that path, and I currently earn slightly less than a manager, and also getting more responsibilities as per the role. My manager and I sometimes joke that I upgraded from being a bronze cog to a golden one, but honestly, I don't mind, as I know I would absolutely fail at managing. I think I can speak on behalf of all of our listeners today when I say, man, it sure would be nice if you don't already have one to have a manager or supervisor as loyal and that has your back as much as the one shared in this story. I mean, how cool to have someone that truly wants you to succeed, like at that level, at that capacity. Amazing. Mira DeFalco commented, "Years ago, I started working as a temp, and my manager wanted to promote me to a higher tier position. I kept applying, but HR wouldn't even consider me. Meanwhile, they had to set up extra training classes because they couldn't get people trained fast enough to meet the demand. My manager got fed up with HR refusing to talk to me and slotted me into a last-minute vacancy because they didn't have time to backfill. A good half of the HR picks washed out during initial training, and we lost more once we hit the live case training. One of them literally had no idea how to use a computer. Out of the 30 that started, we kept 6, and that dropped to 4 within 6 months. I was considered a senior rep by then. But yes, HR, do tell us about how important it is to follow your screening process." Our next story is, "I had my first road rage and I used it to gridlock an intersection. I don't really get road rage. I think it's a weird, unique thing to me because the nicest people I know still get road rage. But the other month, I got road rage for the first time. I was driving on a one-way downtown through my old college. A light was still green, but I noticed the next light had people stopped all the way up to the intersection I was at. So I stopped at the line to avoid the light turning red while I was still stuck in the middle of the intersection. I did it maybe a little abruptly, not slamming on my brakes, but not something I started braking for when most people would have if it were a red light. Something between leaning towards the latter. Anyways, I think the car behind me probably almost rear-ended me and was ticked when he saw the light was green. He started slamming on the horn. He rolled down his window, flipped me off, waving me forward, calling me names. I was okay until he just kept going. I thought maybe he would realize what was going on. Nope, he just kept honking, kept yelling at me like I was the dumbest person on the road. Fine, I thought, ticked off enough now. I saw there was just enough space between the crosswalk ahead and the car I could squeeze in and not really bother anyone. The next light is still red. I pull forward, squeeze in, and Mr. Sunshine behind me just follows me like I'm going anywhere else. So much joy when our light turned red and the next one hadn't turned green yet. There's college students everywhere. He reverses to let them through, but reverses right into oncoming traffic that was just about to start. People pull up to Mr. Sunshine and start honking. He tries squeezing his car as close to mine, but cuts off the pedestrians in the process, and now everyone's ticked. His big SUV is now blocking traffic and the crosswalk. The light turns green again, and the next wave of traffic can't get through. Everyone's honking. He's flipping off the other people. We finally went, and the intersection ungridlocked itself. Joy. I felt joy from my first road rage experience. Well, I wouldn't really call this road rage on behalf of OP. It's not like you did anything aggro to antagonize the situation. You actually pulled into a spot where you could just barely fit in. Yeah, it's the other guy, the tailgater that, clearly has somewhere that he needs to be ASAP. He's the one with the road rage, and I can't stand when people do that. When the light's about to turn red, you pull into the intersection, you block the way, now no one can go anywhere, and you've just created a hot mess express. So, good malicious compliance. Drivers, please don't do this. Crash866 commented, "I've let that happen at a railway crossing. The other side of the tracks was backed up and the last vehicle was barely off the tracks. I stopped back at the gate line and the idiot behind me was honking and screaming for me to move up. Just then, the gates came down and a train doing full speed went through. Before the gates went up, he was honking again and the other vehicle was still where it was. The gates then went up. I got out of my vehicle and said to him, 'Where do you want me to go?' Just then, the gates come back down and a second train went through. If I had moved up, he would have been right in front of it. I knew the train schedules and knew the second train would be there any moment. After the second train went through, I sat and waited until there was room for 4 to 5 cars to clear the track." Our next story is, "New dress code? Sure, I'll follow it exactly." So I work at a small marketing agency. Nothing fancy, pretty relaxed environment. For years, we've been wearing smart casual, jeans, sneakers, button-down shirts. Everyone's comfortable, clients don't care, and it's all good. Then we get a new creative director. Let's call her Laura. She's all about professionalism, so she issues a dress code, business formal only. No jeans, no sneakers, jackets, ties, dresses, the works. She says, quote, "If you want to be taken seriously, you have to look the part, no exceptions." All right then. So Monday morning, I show up in my only business formal outfit, an ancient 3-piece suit my dad gave me for college interviews. I'm talking brown, wide lapels, tie so loud it might be a war crime. Everyone else did the same, dusted off old suits and dresses from back of the closet. We look like a low-budget wedding party. Meanwhile, Laura's in a sleek, tailored outfit worth more than my car. Clients start asking if we're going to a funeral or a prom. Our social media manager's suit was 2 sizes too big. He kept tripping over the pants. The receptionist looked like she was wearing a mother of the bride outfit. One of our designers came in wearing an honest-to-God top hat just to see if Laura would blink. By Friday, she'd had enough. She calls an emergency meeting to announce the dress code is now business casual again, with flexibility to ensure comfort and personal style. Guess suits didn't make the work better after all. I'm just gonna say it, it's 2025. That method of thinking is so dated. Certain establishments, it is probably necessary, but it doesn't sound like this is one such case. So good to just, turn back the rules a little bit and let everyone be free and comfortable. Rough Rider commented, I'm a blue-collar worker, so my dress code has always been about safety. Long pants, steel-toed boots, etc. My brother is an engineer and works in an office. He told me about his first day at his current company. They told him, we don't have a dress code. Don't be the reason we start one. Code operator added, we always looked forward to the first HR all-hands email in the spring about too much exposed flesh. It was usually the same person who had dressed like they were going clubbing. HR would say it was a safety issue and recommend long pants, closed-toed shoes, sleeves over the shoulder, etc. Some joker would leave a hard hat on her desk overnight. Our next story is, the only battle I ever won with a college. I went to college back in the early 70s, close to the last era when you could kind of pay your way while going to school. I lived off campus, rode my bike to school, worked at the college hospital loading dock part-time during school and full-time the rest of the year. I avoided additional fees like parking permits, and it was before big student activity fees. Upon completion of my degree, I received a letter from Harvard of the Cuyahoga that asked for $150 as a matriculation fee. As I was not attending graduation, I called and asked why. I was informed it was for my diploma. I had spent over 2 years of my life at this particular school, finishing my degree, and had paid them, a 1970 figures, don't laugh, about $14,000 to date. I had kind of assumed the diploma was included. My diploma was included in high school, and I didn't pay them a thing. So I asked if I would still be able to get transcripts if I did not pay the fee, and they said yes. I thanked them for their time. Cool, I got on with life, still in the same city. About 7 years later, I get a call from the dean's office, and the nice lady explains that they've had my diploma sitting in a drawer, and could they please messenger it over to me. They would really like to get rid of it. I think that's the only battle I ever won with the college. And what a sweet, sweet victory it probably was for that ultra-expensive diploma that you worked so hard to get. Marine0311 commented, I won a few battles with my college. The best was with the parking permit. As a disabled vet, I had a handicap play card. I successfully argued that I was legally entitled to park in handicapped spots, no matter where they were. They couldn't charge me a fee to park in them. Still Not Elf commented, the school closest to me has a mix of handicap spots in the normal sense and parking spots where they only sell the relevant permit to handicapped individuals. It's like some spots are 24/7 and some are handicapped spots only during business hours. Our next story is, you want it in writing? You got it. A few years back, I was working in a small office where I basically did a bit of admin work, customer service, scheduling, you name it. I was kind of the unofficial catch-all employee. My manager loved being in control, but would never actually take responsibility when things went sideways. One day, one of our longtime clients called in and asked to reschedule a major service appointment. They were super reliable, always paid on time, and honestly just easy to work with. I looked at the schedule and saw that with a bit of rearranging, we could make their new time work just fine. So I went ahead and made the change. Done and dusted. Later that day, the manager stormed into my office like she had just caught me stealing company secrets. She asked if I rescheduled the said client without her approval. I affirmed and told her I've done that in the past. She then said from then on, I was not to make any schedule change without written approval from her. Email me every time. I want it in writing. Those were her words. Okay then, if that's what she wanted, I could play that game. And from that moment on, I emailed her for every single change, even the smallest, most routine stuff. Appointment time shifts, when someone came back from lunch late, if a client called in to confirm something, if a tech was running 10 minutes behind. Didn't matter, I sent it all, and I waited for her written approval every time. It didn't take long before things started to pile up. Clients were calling back wondering why their appointments hadn't been confirmed. Techs were waiting in the parking lot because I couldn't officially send them to the next job without her go-ahead. One poor guy waited 45 minutes because she didn't check her email all morning. After about 2 weeks of this nonsense, she came charging into my office completely exasperated. She asked why I was blowing up her inbox with all of that. I simply told her I was just doing exactly what she asked. You said everything had to be in writing, so I'm making sure I have your approval before touching anything, I said at the end. She just stood there blinking, realizing she'd created her own nightmare. Let's just say that little policy didn't last much longer. Yeah, if you're gonna maliciously comply, you gotta be all into it. You've gotta give them exactly what they want. They want it in writing, send them literally everything. I'm going to lunch, I'm taking a dump, be back in 20 minutes, I'm caught in traffic, just give them every little detail of what's going on. Ridcoley commented, I had something similar happen earlier this year. A new manager said to me, every email that a customer writes or you must respond to must have me in CC or a copy forwarded to me. It was not just that, but I could no longer approve or schedule things. It was up to her from now on. Everything, I mean everything, stalled. She couldn't keep up and didn't have any idea what was going on. You can set this up in MS Outlook with rules, so I ended up flooding her inbox with the most ridiculous emails, like, thanks, have a great weekend, which drowned out the important emails. I showed my colleagues how to set this up, and I sincerely hope that they did too, but I don't know. She doesn't work there anymore. Our next story is, I got my manager yelled at by a customer over his dumb rules. To understand what happened, you first need to understand two people, Susan and Jack. See, I used to work part-time at a burger joint that has a drive-thru, and I was often the one at the window. Susan was a regular customer, and everyone there had an opinion about her. She's very particular and has a tendency to snap at you if you didn't do it right the first time without being asked. I was her favorite employee, though, because I would always take the time to chat with her if we weren't busy. She was actually quite pleasant once you got to know her, just a bit prickly. Now for Jack. He was the new GM, brought in to fix the restaurant. Now, I don't think there was anything that needed fixing, but the owner disagreed. He was originally meant to be the assistant GM, but then the owner fired our old GM and Jack was put in charge. He was a piece of work, the kind of manager you don't want to have. My favorite Jack moment was when he pulled all the staff on shift into the back while we were still open to lecture us on not smiling enough. You know the type of manager. On to the story. Now, one thing we had to do in the drive-thru is put a numbered sticker on the car's side mirror. This sticker was used by the runners who took food out to identify the car, so it's very important. Susan, however, didn't like having the sticker on her mirror. She was convinced she would get in an accident if the mirror was covered even a little, and always insisted on having it put on the car door instead. This wasn't out of the ordinary. We put stickers on doors all the time when we couldn't reach the mirror. However, Jack decided he wasn't having it, and made a new rule that we could only put stickers on mirrors. I figured, okay, but if the customer asked for it, it should be fine, right? Wrong. I got chewed out for putting the sticker on Susan's car door. I tried to explain to Jack why I did it, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, he just huffed at me and said, look, you need to put the stickers on the mirror, not the door, no exceptions. Well, fine then. Cue malicious compliance. The next time Susan came in, I put the sticker on her mirror as ordered. She was confused, as I always put it on her door without being asked, and snapped. What are you doing? Don't put it there, I'll get into an accident. I explained to her the new rule and that my hands were tied. I didn't want to get in trouble after all. Then I told her that it was Jack's rule. I didn't get to witness the next part directly, unfortunately. However, I heard about it secondhand from my coworkers. Apparently, when one of the runners brought her food out, she stopped them and asked them to go grab Jack. She then proceeded to give Jack the butt-chewing of a lifetime about his dumb rule. One particular quote that was relayed to me was, "What point is there to force them to put it there? They can see it just fine on the door." My thoughts exactly, Susan. Anyway, the rule was later amended that customers could request for the sticker to be placed on their door. Sorry if it wasn't as dramatic as most posts on here, but I wanted to share my bit of compliance. This story is just fine. Sometimes people need to be made aware of their own ignorance, for lack of a nicer word to say. You know, Jack, bad idea. Someone had to say it. If it wasn't this lady, it was going to be someone else. So, good job on OP for complying maliciously. Sty's Ready commented, "Before I have to raise heck, I always let the employee know that I support them and I think whatever rule they're forced into is stupid. Then I tell the manager, in great detail, how stupid their rule is. how I don't work for them and I won't be following the rule, and call them employee repeatedly instead of manager. Then the best part. When they start getting impatient, I start the whole speech again, slightly slower, and repeat parts, just like I know they like. Getting some gray in my beard has let me punish all the minimum wage tyrants I worked for, in spirit, as a kid/young adult. Our next story is, you want us to call in? Sure. I work on the railway, and to put it simply, was assigned to a project to check all incoming trains to the rail yard during specific times. Now, for safety reasons for everyone involved, we need to tell the area control office when we're fiddling with a train, in case someone else is doing work on it. Bad times if we engage the brakes while someone is working on them, for example. We get told that we should call in when we start checking a train, and once we're done. So far, so good. The control office, however, were not prepared for how many trains we're going to check, and we were a handful of people, calling in twice for every train. A lot of calls, basically, but it worked. Day 2, however, we got new orders. We're to use the rail yard's own mobile app, where they make a list of all the trains we check, and we just check in and out of the app. Super good for us, since we can see if anyone else has entered that they're working on a train in the app. Super good for everyone involved. Until day 3, when we left our list of trains for the day at the office, now with new personnel who claimed that they certainly did not have time to enter that whole list of trains into the app. Fair enough, we know we're a drain on their resources, and tell them that's fine, we'll just call in when we start working on a train. Now, we could sometimes call in and say, I'll be working on train XX, then YY, and later ZZ. And they would just check us into all of them, since the trains just sit there most of the time if they're not being shunted or repaired. We could work around cleaners and other personnel safely, but not now. Now we call separately for the start and finish of each train. You can hear the control office people start figuring it out. They complained to our project manager, who basically said that we were clear to just phone in according to the rules. It took half the shift before the message came in that all the trains were in the app, and to just use the app for all of it. Apparently, it was faster to just enter our list than taking so many calls for something rather trivial in the grand scheme of things. There's an old saying, well actually it's more of a newer saying, work smarter, not harder. Perfect example. And also, time is money. What is going on, 2028 commented. I work for an electric utility in a control center. I work on the transmission side, and there are distribution dispatchers on the other side of the building. We're required to call them anytime a circuit operates, even if it closes back on its own. They can suspend the rule if there's a storm and they're too busy to answer the phones. Some of them are pretty prepared and suspend the rule early, which means we no longer have to track it. Another detail is that it's all recorded by a program, too. The call is just an extra step to make sure they see it. Some of them won't suspend the rule because they don't care since it's being recorded anyway. Well, they do have to answer the phone though. If a storm is getting bad and there's a lot of operations, each person on the crew will take only one operation, call, report, hang up, and call back. Then they have a lot of calls waiting for something that's already being recorded. Eventually, they get the message and suspend the rule. Our next story is, lazy boss demands I do as he says, or quit. So back circa 2000, I was a freshman in college. I didn't have a wealthy family, but good scholarships from grades, but I still had to work 20 hours a week to make ends meet. I ended up working in the school cafeteria as a dishwasher. This position paid extra compared to other student positions, and I got a free meal each shift. There were a couple full-time staff supplemented by us students. They, of course, got the clean side of the conveyor belt washer. These guys were all great, very nice to us students. The other 3 spots, first spot on conveyor to pull silverware, cups, and garbage, second conveyor spot, rinsing and stacking dishes, and the person loading washer, were typically students. First quarter goes good. We're a bit short-handed, but the group I usually worked with got on well, and we all learned which spots we were fastest at. So when busy, we'd all go to where fastest to keep from getting overwhelmed. When slower, we'd rotate to break up monotony. Second quarter rolls around and someone in management decided we needed a dishroom supervisor. Enter new hire, Kevin. Kevin is a lazy jerk. He would spend 1 to 2 hours eating and would only come in to yell at us before disappearing. We all hated him. Well, one night it happened. Kevin decided he was going to order which spot we worked at. Of course, he did this on a shift we were shorter than usual and somehow managed to put all 3 of us in our slowest spots. I, of course, tried to explain why we had been in different spots and should stay there. Kevin was having none of it, told me to shut up and do as he said or quit. So I did. I said I was done and walked out. His expression was priceless. Even better, when I changed and came back for dinner, he was having to work himself in the first conveyor spot, close by tray drop-off, so I made sure to smile at him. I apologized to my friends for dipping out on them, but they understood. They didn't last too much longer either, but Kevin apparently treated them nicer afterwards. Yeah, so again, managers on a power trip, before you threaten to fire someone or imply that they should quit, make sure that you've got a little bit of leverage before doing so. I mean, I wouldn't condone it in the first place, but it's like a double failure when your employee has nothing to lose and they're just like, all right, I'm out. Firm response, 846 replied, shout out to work-study kids. I worked in a college post office for 5 years as a civvy, and those were the coolest kids I'd ever met. You guys sound like you had it all figured out. Too bad Kev freaked it up. Alright everybody, that's all the time we got for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment down below. And if you want to check out any of our other videos, click the video on the right. Got nothing else for you. I will see you all next time.